You know, I'm not as stupid as I look. Am I? Sometimes I think God made me just smart enough to comprehend how ignorant I really am. My condition is a psychological hell of sorts, something perhaps akin to the concept of a hell where one is mentally tortured forevermore by the knowledge that he or she could have done better. On the other hand, I suppose my condition could be a blessing in disguise. Shakespeare said, "The fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knoweth himself to be a fool." Maybe I'm not as dumb as I look after all. Cornell University psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger hypothesized that genuinely incompetent people don't know that they're incompetent, but rather tend to employ a cognitive bias of illusory superiority, mistakenly assessing their abilities and intelligence to be much higher than they really are. This theory has come to be known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger research project was prompted by a 1999 newspaper article in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette about two men named MacArthur Wheeler and Clinton Earl Johnson, who robbed two banks in the Pittsburgh area in around 1995. The robbers' faces were captured on bank security cameras, and they were promptly arrested. When questioned later by the police, the men were surprised to learn that they had been photographed and identified by the bank's cameras. Having read that lemon juice had been used by George Washington as invisible ink to transmit secret messages during the Revolutionary War, Wheeler and Johnson had rubbed lemon juice all over their faces, believing that they would be rendered invisible by the bank's security cameras. After reading the article, Professors Dunning and Kruger were astonished that anybody could be so stupid. Consequently, they decided to conduct a scientific experiment on the subject. Recruiting 87 undergraduate students to participate in the experiment, they administered to each student a series of tests focusing on logical reasoning, grammar, and social skills. Since the original experiment by Dunning and Kruger, numerous similar studies have been conducted across a wide range of tasks, including business, politics, medicine, driving, aviation, spatial memory, examinations in school, and literacy. The object of the experiment was to compare the students' post-test self-assessments with their actual objective performance. Before receiving their test scores, students were asked how they thought they had performed. Virtually all of those who had scored in the lower 25 percentile, that's failing, clearly showing incompetence, guessed, these that were in the lowest percentile, guessed that they had performed either average or above average, confirming the notion that ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. A little quote there for you by Charles Darwin. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. The primary objective of the Dunning-Kruger experiment was to validate the hypothesis that people who are incompetent and or stupid don't necessarily know that they're incompetent and or stupid. They think they're average. The experiment, however, produced a second unexpected paradigm. Those who are exceptionally intelligent and are competent tend to think of themselves as average also. Very smart people think everybody is just as smart as they are, and that their advanced level of expertise in a given area is pretty much common knowledge among everybody else. Hence, authentic competence fosters humility, not pride and arrogance. Real smart people are not prideful and arrogant. They're usually humble. This is the natural way of things. Those who are prideful and boastful of their own competence or intelligence are often not as smart as they would have us believe. Many competent and successful people suffer from a psychological condition known as imposter syndrome, whereby they are persistently nagged by feelings of inadequacy and a belief that their success is undeserved. They feel like imposters, perpetuating fraud on all of those who believe them to be truly accomplished. People who feel this way constitute a large portion of the human population. They're most frequently found in the entertainment industry, where their accomplishments are mostly measured by hordes of anonymous fans who adore them but don't really know them. One does not have to be an entertainer, however, to suffer from imposter syndrome. Many of us may feel that way when we're lauded with accolades for a fluke performance of some type, like an extraordinary speech that we might give, or an athletic performance which is really beyond our normal capabilities. We graciously accept our accolades and compliments, but we know in our hearts that it was just a fluke. We feel like imposters. A third psychological phenomenon relative to incompetence is called the Peter Principle. This is a satirical business management theory authored by Dr. Lawrence J. Peter in 1969, which suggests that employees in a hierarchy are typically promoted to their highest level of incompetence. And there they remain, creating a bottleneck in the operational system of the company or organization. The reason for this anomaly is that employees are typically promoted based on their success in previous jobs until they reach a level at which they're no longer competent. Business and government organizations of all types are overwhelmed by incompetencies resulting from the Peter Principle. In government, they're often called bureaucrats, and they're found firmly tenured in key positions of power and authority. They can't be demoted, and they can't be fired, so they stay right where they are until they retire or die. Employers often attempt to assist an incompetent employee by promoting another incompetent employee to act as his or her assistant. This seldom works because incompetence plus incompetence equals what? Incompetence. I'll say it again. Incompetence plus incompetence equals incompetence. That's a little quote there from the author Lawrence J. Peter. Broadcast news anchor Chris Wallace spoke in a television interview a few years ago about his experience as a White House correspondent while employed with NBC News. Asked what he had learned from serving in the White House that surprised him the most, Wallace said that he had always before had an abiding faith and confidence in all those who served in the highest positions of power in our nation, those who had attended the most elite colleges and universities in the world, whose government experiences had put them face to face with the world's greatest leaders. He assumed, he said, that those distinguished individuals were at least competent at their jobs. Actually, they knew exactly what they were doing. However, after getting to know these powerful government leaders personally, I found them to be seriously challenged and even incompetent, said Wallace. I worried constantly about our country after leaving that job assignment, and I was unable to even get a good night's sleep for a long time. I finally had to block those disturbing thoughts entirely from my mind in order to protect my own sanity. I, too, worry excessively about the incompetence which seems to invariably invade my living space. Sometimes I wish I'd never heard of Dunning-Kruger, the imposter syndrome, or the Peter Principle. British philosopher Bertrand Russell expressed my sentiments best when he said, quote, "One of the painful things about our times is that those who feel certainty are stupid, and those with any imagination and understanding at all are filled with doubt and indecision." I guess my only comfort is that even though I look stupid and feel stupid, I may very well be a genius.